This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Markport. This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Excited to have you along for the ride tonight, episode number 96. On deck, Jeff Jackson was just startled because he thought that he was supposed to be on. In my efforts to double check things, I inadvertently made a second stream. So we got that information updated. We should be good to go. But it has been a little over 3 months, I think, since the last time we were on. So we got that information updated.
It's been a while, yes. Get a little feedback over here, but yeah, definitely been a while since we've been on. It's nice to be back in the studio, and hopefully we can get back on a somewhat regular schedule. Kind of covering everything that's going on in the off season as people prepare after a fairly successful, I think, 2021 for the most part. I don't think COVID had any impact on racing this year compared to last year, so I think everyone's kind of glad to be back in the swing of things.
Yeah, we did not get to quite do the same things that we had planned to do this year. We spent a lot more time chasing soccer than we did anything else. But yeah, it was good that everything had slowed down, at least for the foreseeable future. Alan got invited to play on a travel league out in Marcellus.
Nice.
Which is on the other side of Skinny Atlas. Those games are going to be on Saturday mornings through the winter, so it shouldn't conflict with anything. And it's just fun to get back, and I haven't seen you in ages.
It's been a while.
And tons of new things happening over at Casa de Oldfield.
There's a few, yeah. I mean, there's been a few for sure. I guess, yeah. Overall, the biggest thing for me is the new job that I just started. Yeah, that's been taking up a lot of my time overall, but so far so good. Definitely looking forward to getting going with that. Yeah, racing wise, had the Corvette out a lot this year, and
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and that was fun. I will say it was nice to have the car back out. Most racing I've done in quite a while. I have to say, not that I really did well, because I didn't, but but it was still fun to get out there, and
Well, you almost had to, didn't you? I mean, you put all the effort into getting the front redone, and I assume you got on. I think it was talking about methanol, right?
Yeah. We made the switch to methanol. So yeah, had the new headers built for this season. Had that done. Had the vacuum pump put on. I forget what else. What the heck else we did this off season, but nothing huge. But yeah, I mean the headers needed to get done obviously, and went out with the same combination that I had been running with my Demon Racing gasoline carburetor, and that was one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to test the car like that before we moved to methanol, just to make sure that the headers didn't affect anything negatively, or maybe be pleasantly surprised that picked some power up with it. At the end of the day, I mean honestly, with the headers that Randy from RJ built, it was exactly the same as what I took off. So yeah, I went from a 2 1/8 inch primary to a 1 3/4 to 1 7/8 step header. And I was a little concerned about the smaller primary tube size, but they work just as good as what I had.
Do you want to rephrase that?
How so?
Well, the ones that you had were turning into Swiss cheese.
Well, yes, that is true. Yeah, yes, that is true. So if I need to be replaced, it's just funny though. Overall, I mean, the thought process used to be that yes, if you had a race motor, you basically need to have gigantic headers, a gigantic header tube, and that's just not really true. What I found was that the primary tube size essentially affects the torque curve, but doesn't really affect the overall performance, if you will. And when you look at what you're trying to do, especially today with bracket racing, you're definitely better off with a small block at least, to have a smaller primary tube than you are a gigantic primary tube. So yeah, put them on, and the other thing I did is I had my converter loosened up as well and freshened up. So we did that, and like I said, the car was exactly the same. And again, it was concerning to me, but yeah, there was no reason for concern. I was worrying about nothing, and yeah, so they worked great. So we started off the season like that, and did some racing. I don't know if we did.
Was
have
it easier to see out of? Didn't you replace a bunch of the windows and stuff too?
Oh, that was the other thing. Yeah, I forgot. That was the other thing. Yes, it was a lot easier to see out of. Yeah,
and the trim. I got the trim put on, right?
I got the trim put on. Yep. So that was kind of a sore spot for me. That finally got that taken care of. And yeah, the new windows are nice. Yeah, they did a real nice job on them. It's nice to not have the scratches and the shadows of numbers written in shoe polish still showing on the windows. I would say for next year, I want to. So I still had to write numbers on the windows this year, and it's like I don't want to do that because I don't want to wreck this set of windows. So for next season, I'm going to get a set of dial-in boards, and put those in the car so that I don't have to write on the windows with shoe polish anymore. And the nice thing too is if you do that, so I'll have to replace a delay box. So you don't have to, but best way to do it is replace the delay box. Then when you're putting your numbers in your delay box, it automatically updates your dial-in boards for you. And now you can basically change your dial-in while you're sitting in the car, where before you have to write your number on the window and then hope that's the number you want to go with. So there's some advantages to having the dial-in boards too, aside from just looks. But yeah, that'll be a 2021-22 off-season upgrade.
How did you get it there? Was it Phil's trailer?
Yeah, we used Phil's trailer. So Phil decided that he wanted to have his motor freshened on his car, so he had the motor freshened basically when he got back from Florida. That's on the Camaro, right. So he took his time, and we raced my car exclusively up until about August 1st, and then his car was ready. And at that point, I'm like, all right, now let's go ahead and make the switch over to methanol. While we're racing Phil's car, we'll switch my car over to methanol. So did that, and I mean, it was pretty painless overall. I mean, honestly, it was kind of just like a bunch of guys had mentioned. Chris Scarlatta was a huge help to me in making this changeover. And when I first made the switch, I mean, I borrowed Chris and Phil's one of their spare carburetors just to give it a try and see how it was, and put it on the car, and honestly, I mean, it was different. It was certainly weird for me just because of the fact I'm so used to racing gasoline, and the car heating up fairly well to now literally the car doesn't want to get above 160 degrees. So that was a little strange to get used to, but in the 8th mile, my car on gas would run 113 and change mile an hour, and this is on the throttle stop. And still on the throttle stop, I was going low 114s, and I could definitely tell that the thing was making more torque, leaving the line better. So yeah, overall it worked great. It was very easy to do. Took the foam out of the fuel cell, bolted his carburetor on. I had to make a couple of new fuel lines just because the old fuel lines that I had didn't fit on his carburetor. But that was pretty much it. I didn't change the spark plugs. I didn't change the timing.
I've heard that a bunch of places outside of the drag racing world, that you can do quite a bit of improvements, but you don't necessarily have to change the carburetor a whole lot.
Yeah.
And are you running a travel tank on that has regular fuel in it, or are you on methanol?
Nope, just straight methanol. And I will say that, overall it would make it a little nicer. I mean, Chris does that on his car. He has, a racing gasoline, very small tank of, for racing gasoline, so he can basically run both. So he's driving around the pits, he'll run it and make it easy start for racing gasoline and then switch over to methanol. But yeah, no, I mean, and most guys don't. And the only time I had any sort of issue is, I will say that we went to Nemedi at the end of the year and raced there, and on Sunday morning when I went to start the car, it was only 48 degrees outside. So it didn't like starting at that temperature. Now, racing gasoline doesn't generally like to start at 48 degrees either, but the racing gasoline, it definitely starts easier than methanol
Did you get
does.
the four-wheel out and push started?
That's what I should have done. Yeah, yeah. Once you get started, I mean, and this is the thing as far as maintenance goes. Chris, basically taught me, it's like, what he does is his dad will, at the end of the night, essentially let the car just run out of methanol, and then take and put racing gasoline and squirt it down the vent tubes to basically kind of backfill the bowls a little bit, so that the next time you go to start it, you're starting it on racing gasoline, and it also helps make sure that you're not getting moisture sucked into the carburetor, because that's what methanol likes to do, is basically collect moisture. And doing that, honestly, it was great. It was generally very easy to start, and I didn't have any issues. Now, I will say that we switched. So I tried Chris's carburetor, ran that, I think twice I ran it, and then decided, okay, yeah, I'm going to really give it a go and make the switch. And at that point, ordered my own carburetor from Pro Systems. I talked to a bunch of guys out there that run methanol, and everyone's like, yeah, Pro Systems, Pro Systems, Pro Systems. So I'm like, all right.
What carburetor was on it before? That was a Demon, wasn't it?
So I had a Demon, yeah.
And you didn't want to mess with that?
No, yeah, basically, so I mean, the biggest thing, so I mean, they used to, I don't know if they do or not, I don't really know the whole deal.
How many spreadsheets did you build?
I don't think any, there were some online calculators that I probably use, but yeah, they used to call them pills, and I don't know if they still do so instead of jets, they used to call them pills, and I don't know if if that's for like a Ron's toilet system. I don't really know. But so the jets on my Demon carburetors, that was a 980 CFM carb. And I was running, I think it was 92s on the secondaries and I think 86 on the primaries. So that's thousandths of an inch.
Mm-hmm.
The Pro Systems, when I got it, Patrick from Pro Systems had 186s all the way around. So the jet hole is basically twice the size of what I was running on my gasoline carburetor. Now, could I have just used a 186 carburetor in my Demon? I'm guessing probably not. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Again, methanol, you got to be careful with methanol, just because it's not as easy on a lot of different parts as racing gasoline is. So, like I know with a fuel pump and stuff like that, you got to make sure that you have the right seals and crud like that in it. So thankfully, when I bought all my fuel system components, I sized everything up to make sure I was going to have enough, not only if I ever went to methanol, but just in case I ever put a bigger motor in the car, that I would have enough. So, and the MagnaFuel pump that I have just happens to be compatible with both racing gasoline and alcohol. So from that standpoint, I was fine.
I never really thought about that, about the pump situation.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that you have to be concerned about. Now, I will say that some guys, basically swear that you got to run a mechanical fuel pump, and maybe you do if you get to a really big engine with making a lot of power, but. Yeah, the guys I talked to, everyone was like, you're fine with an electric pump. And again, the thought process was, if you wanted to run methanol in the old days, you had to have a fuel cell up front. You couldn't be pumping the fuel from the back of the car. And there was a whole bunch of things you had to do, which is why I never did it in the past, or one of the reasons why I never did it in the past. But yeah, the end of the story for a small block that makes 650 horsepower, yeah, if you get the right size fuel pump and you have the right size fuel line, you can run methanol. And like I said, I didn't change the timing, I didn't change the plugs. Let's just try it, and it worked pretty well. Now, my carburetor, the Pro Systems carb, I had some issues with that when I first got it going, but most of that, it wasn't really the fault of the carburetor. It was really my fault. So on the side of the carburetor where you hook the linkage, there are kind of let's call it the stock brackets and plates essentially that Holley sends with the carburetors that rotate when you're opening and closing the throttle. Well, my Demon carburetor had most of all that stuff all machined off. Well, what Pro Systems does is they basically send you the stock bracket. Which makes sense, because that way if you had another carburetor on your car and you were using one of those other mounting holes or tabs on that and you needed that, and all of a sudden you get this carburetor from Pro Systems, you're like, well, great, now what am I supposed to do? I don't have the brackets that I need. So when we got it and we put it on the car, initially we could see there's looked like a little bit of interference, so we decided to cut one of these little tabs off. The problem is that we missed the one tab essentially on there, and this was a tab that was hitting on the throttle stop, on the plate that I have, the plate throttle stop that I have underneath the carb. And it's funny because overall, I tried it. Wide open throttle, worked great. Well, now I go and I do my burnout for my first pass, and you're not wide open when you're doing a burnout. You're feathering the throttle doing the burnout. So you have your return springs, which are, when you're wide open, they're stretched more, so they're putting more force essentially on the return of the throttle. Now you're feathering it, you're midway. Well, it just so happens that this tab was hitting the throttle stop right at that location and not opening the throttle all the way. The springs didn't have enough tension in them to,
to go the other
close the throttle. So I do my burnout, and thankfully nobody was in front of me because the throttle hung open. So that's the first pass, and I got, I don't know, maybe 60 foot out, and I'm like, okay, well, and I forget. I can't remember if on the first pass, well, I think, on the first pass actually, my initial inclination was throw it in a neutral. So I threw it in a neutral, RPM started coming up, so I pulled it back into drive and just clicked it off. Okay, let's go back. And I went and looked, and it's like, I didn't see that tab, but I saw another tab. So here we are at the track, we get the die grinder out, we cut this second tab off. Now go up for second time. Well, actually, we only got one time run that day. So now I'm going up for first round, and I go into the burnout box, and same thing, throttle hangs open. And I'm like, oh my God, what the heck?
When the throttle hung, did the car go straight?
Yes, but this was in my car, right? So my car always goes straight. So throttle hung open again, went back to the pits, and thankfully Joe Masulo, he was there, happened to be at the top end of the track the second time when I stopped, and both times I got out of the car, took the hood off very quickly, and manually closed the throttle and drove it off the track. And the second time he's like, "Hey Jay, look at this." He goes, "It's hitting the throttle stop." And so then we went back to the pits the second time, and there was a tab that you kind of had to look just the right way down from the top side, and I could see where this was hitting. And again, it was only on the burnout. If I full throttle wide open, it would close just fine. So then at that point, we got it so that
you had to be like almost sick to your stomach in that. Not so much for the concern. Thankfully, nobody was in front of you and everything like that. But you got all this work done in the car, and now it won't.
Well, yeah, and it was aggravating too because I bolted Chris's carburetor on and it worked great, right? I did nothing to it. I bolted it on, it worked great, and obviously I brought it out with the gasoline carburetor and it worked great. And I've taken a car now that was working great and I can't even do a burnout. And so I actually ended up going to the buyback, and I came around and. I did a successful burnout. I was joking with people beforehand. I'm like, all right, the bar at this point is I want to be able to do a burnout. Let's see if I can do that. So I was able to do a burnout, and then the car wouldn't stay running. And I'm trying to remember what the heck the issue was. But the car wouldn't stay running, and I just staged it up in the buyback round, hoping that my competitor would red light, and they didn't. I just drove it down the track. And
Joe?
That was the end of the day. Who we have online here?
Joe Masulo.
Oh, he heard his ears were ringing.
The resident Corvette EMT.
Yes, and I do appreciate him because honestly, I don't know if I would have saw it, but like I said, he saw it, and I did appreciate that. So ended up that was it for the weekend, and then we went back, and Oh yeah, so the car wouldn't stay running. That's what it was. And so then we went back and all right, let's pull this thing off and take a look at it. Well, there are four
Wait.
bolts.
Hang on.
Yeah.
I think I lost you. So, did the burnout and it ran. Then when did you find that it wasn't running?
So did the burnout. Now on the buyback round, I'm going to stage the car, and the car doesn't want to stay running. So I'm like, yeah, fantastic. So as soon as I pull it into gear, it wants to stall. Put it into neutral, it's idling at like 2,500 RPM. Put it into gear, and it wants to stall. And I'm like, okay, fantastic, right? I'm like, now I'm just thinking, it's like I just had the throttle hung open on me twice. And I was actually thinking, it's like, I could probably keep this thing running and stage it and run it down the track. It's like, do I really want to do that? Is that really a smart idea? I'm like, no, it's not. It is not a smart idea to do that. So I just staged it up again to see if my competitor would red light. They didn't. I drove it down the track, and that was it for the end of the day. Well, what I didn't know is that there's four bolts on the bottom, a base plate of the carburetor that hold the base plate to the body of the carburetor. Well, I guess it's very common for those bolts to loosen up either right after manufacturing, during shipping, or whatever else it is. So they had loosened up, and they were causing a vacuum leak, and that's why the thing wouldn't stay running. So when we brought it back, I took it off the car, basically went through everything and made sure everything was tight.
Do they loosen up when they're in use, or is it just the shipping?
I've never seen it. I mean, never, ever.
Yeah, it seems crazy to me. The only thing that would make me wonder about that, I mean, and this is either very, very low level or very, very presumptuous, is because methanol can run so cold, it'll make everything shrink up, so it's not going to hold as tight, and it can let the stuff back out. But I've never heard of any of this other than right now.
Yeah, no, I haven't either, and and I don't know if it was just let's call it a manufacturing issue. My carburetor was made on a Friday afternoon. The guy wanted to get out the door. I don't really know, but in the end, it's my fault. I mean, that's something that you need to check that stuff before you put it on your race car, right? And I didn't check it, so we did all that, and after that, we took the car out, and it was fine. I will say, I believe it's too rich. So working with Chris's carburetor, my oil looked pretty much perfect. With the Pro Systems carb, my oil didn't look perfect. It had a lot of water in it. Yeah. And I still have a vacuum pump on it, which was pulling vacuum and pulling water out into the puke tank. But I just don't think the vacuum pump was able to basically keep up, and it's like I said, I think it's just too rich at this point. So now what I want to do is I want to put some O2 sensors on the car and the collectors, and that way you can really look at what your air fuel ratio is and very simply essentially tune the car for what is, let's call it, perfect. Could you do it trial and error? Yeah, you can do it trial and error, but I don't want to do that, and I like to have real data to kind of back up. Yes, this is what you should be doing. And the Pro Systems carb, I will say, the Pro Systems carb wasn't as fast as the carb that I borrowed from Chris. So again, that kind of leads me to believe that it was probably too rich. So I mean, again, that was kind of the end of the season. And all right, fine, I'll just run it the way it is. And I think I only have.
Joe says maintenance, buddy.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, it definitely takes, the methanol definitely takes a little bit more maintenance. It's not a ton. It really isn't. It's not that hard to take the car back when you're done for the night and let the car run out of fuel and then, squirt some gasoline into the bowls to...
I guess your margin for error in terms of your maintenance, you got to just be more precise on what you're doing. Not necessarily more of it, just more accurate with what you're doing, because you don't want that stuff. You don't want that methanol stuff sitting in there.
No, yeah, you definitely don't. And I will say that right now my car is completely winterized. The only thing I haven't done yet is I haven't... so we were at New Media, I want to say 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago.
Where was the water coming from? Was it just...
The methanol just sucks it right out of the air.
Well, I mean, we used to tell the story about methanol racers and stuff when I was working at Lakeland Equipment to lawnmower operators in Fairport and Parrington when they would come in and their mowers wouldn't run and their fuel tanks would be sucked inside out and their fuel cap would have a pimple on the top.
Yep.
And when ethanol started getting introduced to all the fuels, when it would sit over the winter, it would suck that down.
Right.
And they're like, well, if it's sucking water, why is there water in it? And it would, as the water came in, it would collect the dust and stuff from the garage, and it would make that little zit on the top of the vent, and it would suck it.
And I will say methanol is to an extreme, but ethanol has the same issue. And that's why if you go to any small engine repair place, they tell you do not run ethanol-free gas in all your small engine stuff, because unless you're going to be ridiculously good about maintaining them and making sure you're draining all the fuel out of the carburetor bowls and the tank and everything else, it just it creates moisture and eats away seals and does all sorts of nasty stuff.
See, I was wondering if your water was coming from when you were getting back to the pits and shutting things off, and you're worried about cutting that thing apart and everything like that. If your engine temperature
that is certainly
the carburetor was so cold that you were getting condensation that was running down through.
Well, I mean, that is certainly part of it too. So, Billy Lieber told me, he's like, look, if you're going to run methanol, because one thing you have to do is at the end of the night, after you basically run this thing, take the breathers off and essentially give the heat in the engine a place to escape. So I was really good about, every night essentially disconnecting the breathers and, like I said, letting the heat out of the engine as much as I could. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I didn't experience that. I probably ran more runs with Chris Scarlatta's carburetor than I did with my Pro Systems carb. And when I drained the oil out after running it, oil looked great. And like I said, the Pro Systems was definitely not great in comparison. So that tells me that air-fuel mixture is definitely different on the two. Mm-hmm. And, again, my guess is that it's probably just too rich.
Well, I understand that you compensated for it, but you've also got twice the size moving that fuel through, so things are going to be a little bit different there.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I haven't talked to Chris yet to see what size jets he has in his carburetor that I borrowed, but my guess is that when I told him that I had 186s all the way around in mine, he's like, wow, that's kind of big. So that's my guess, is that overall he's going to probably come back and be like, yeah, I'm only running like 150s all the way around in mine. I'd be like, okay, well, let's size this down a little bit and see what happens. And the nice thing about Pro Systems is that when you get a carburetor from them, they ship it with basically a jet size up and a jet size down. So
why on the race fuel carburetor, your Demon,
yeah,
you had 86s and 92s?
Yeah.
But this one's the same all the way around? Your prime is there something different about the construction of the carburetor itself?
The answer is no, and I will say that with the Demon carburetor, when I switched to the Demon carburetor 25 years ago, I took it out of the box, bolted it on the car, said, let's see how it runs, and it ran great, and I never touched it. So in going through this whole process, one of the things that I guess learned about is that you would typically stagger your jets from the primaries to the secondaries like that if you were running a power valve. But my Demon doesn't have a power valve in it. I mean, most race carburetors don't have power valves in it. So there's really no reason to stagger jets like that. So it makes sense that the Pro Systems would be even all the way around. And when I talked to a bunch of people, and Joe might have been one of the guys that I talked to, he's like, why were you running staggered jets like that on your Demon? Why weren't they the same all the way around? And I had no answer other than that's how it came. I took it out of the box, put it on, and it worked great. And it's like, why change it, right? So yeah, I like I said, other than running a power valve, I don't know why you would do that.
I did that I had an Ellerbrock Performer that I put on the 440 in my 300.
Yep.
And I put it on knowing nothing, and got it on and got the thing running. And the issue that I was having was it's the other carburetor. It just had a stumble. It was an old Holly, and it just needed to be replaced because the rebuild didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It was just basically should have lit the money on fire,
Well, that's what we did with Phil's carburetor. Yeah.
But I put that on there and promptly earned the ability to paint any grass behind that car black when it was on the throttle, and it turned the oil into a milkshake on a regular basis.
Yeah,
it just was running way too much fuel down through it. But that wasn't methanol either.
No, probably not. Yeah, probably not. But yeah, and it's funny because we had an issue with Phil's carburetor as well, and that the car wasn't running very well with his old 750 Holly. And I can't remember if he told me if that was the Holly that he ran on his Super Stocker in the 70s. If not, if it wasn't, it was definitely a carburetor that he bought in the mid-'80s. So it had been on the car for close to 40 years. I mean, let's call it 35 years. And
Yes.
we had Chris go through and rebuild it in the off season. And yeah, the rebuild didn't fix it, and it just got to the point where it's like this thing just needs to be replaced. Well, the good news is that I told him, like, look, I don't know if my Demon carburetor will work on your car or not, because you're going from a 750 now up to a 980. It's a considerably bigger carburetor, but we bolted it on his car and it ran great. And so at that point, it's like, all right, well, there you go. You got yourself your new carburetor for the Camaro. So, and yeah, I mean, I will say that I'm fairly committed to making the switch forever to methanol. I mean, at the end of the day, not worrying about temperature is so nice. I mean, at New Media, now granted it was cold outside, but at New Media, I literally didn't turn the fans on the car, ever. So I've made a full pass. I mean, I was warming the car up basically without water, running the fan or water pump, getting the burnout box. At that point, I was trying to get up to 140, do the burnout with just the water pump on, and run the car down the track, and it might have got to 160 degrees at the end of the track.
Yeah.
And then just driving it back, idling it back. I mean, you could basically just watch the temperature gauge fall as you're driving it back to your pit area. And it's like, by the time you get back to the pits, you're 155 degrees, you click the car off, and that's it. You're done. You put fuel in it, and you're ready to go for the next pass. And that's really nice. And, obviously the cost as well. I mean, you're talking about $235 for a 55-gallon drum of methanol with the top lube and the scent, compared to $80. I think it's $80
What
for
scent do you have in yours?
Pina colada.
So proud of you.
I love pina coladas, and it's funny because I was so Cody, who we had on the show, Cody Realm. So he sells the top lube and the scents, and I was just going to get like a cherry or something like that. And he's like, "Oh, I don't have any of the cherry." He's like, "Well, like, what do you got?" And he's like, "Oh, I got this, I got pina colada." I'm like, Stop right there. That's what we're putting in the car. So, and yeah, I will say I love it. Yeah, I mean, it does smell great, and it is funny. I guess in theory, what I've heard is you can add the scent to racing gasoline too. I mean, the racing gasoline never bothered me. The first time we put Chris's carburetor on, we warmed the car up in Phil's shop. The methanol fumes without the scent, they're pretty bad. And like I said, I never experienced that with racing gasoline. So yeah, if you're going to run the methanol, for me personally, it's like I'm going to have to add the scent. I'll change it up next time. But yeah, it's interesting. They have some interesting scents. Like one is called something like your girlfriend's perfume.
That's cool. So those come in a relatively small.
The scents?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the scents are, they might be an 8-ounce bottle that you add for a 55-gallon drum. So like I said, you're $235 for 55 gallons, including the scent and the top lube, versus $80 for a 5-gallon pail of racing gasoline. Now, yes, you do burn more methanol, and in general, people are like, oh, you burn twice as much. And you would think I would burn twice as much, because I went from, let's call it 92 jets all the way around to 184s, right? But it's not, it doesn't end up being 2 to 1 by any means. I mean, I'm going to guess 1.5 to 1. So when you really look at it, the cost savings is really significant. And for the whole season, when I decided to try Chris's carburetor, I bought a drum of fuel and I ran that drum. And again, now I didn't do very well this season, but I still have probably 10 gallons of methanol left. So it's just so much more economical.
Now you got that. You got to get some Castrol GTX, and you can run that in that home like chainsaw.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, overall, I can definitely see why guys love it. Now, yeah, I mean, overall, will I have to do oil changes more than what I was? Yeah, I mean, probably, but I mean, I was changing oil every 20 passes anyways, and I think if I lean this thing out a little bit, that it'll get a lot better.
Eric's checking in. I'm going to butcher it. I've heard you say it 1,000 times.
Macaroli?
That's him.
Eric Macaroni? Yeah. Yep.
Saying me. So, fun story about the scent. You know?
Yep.
You buy the drum, and you know what's in the drum, but
Yep.
the gentleman that was purchasing the scent additive wasn't really thinking in terms of fluid ounces, and ended up ordering more than you might need, to the tune of a significant quantity. A lot. Like, you'd have to be a vendor of this.
Yeah.
So he had to explain why his shop always smelled like marijuana.
Okay. And that is one of the scents that I can say I know for sure that Cody has that scent available.
And it never ran out.
Yeah, that would not be. I have to say that would not be a scent that I would want. I suppose if you were a connoisseur of pot, maybe you'd like the smell. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But hey, to each his own. But yeah, overall, like I said, I can definitely see why guys like it. The biggest thing for me, it's just really nice to not have to worry about the temperature, cooling the car down. I did put so sometime. Late in the season, I did put an oil pan heater on, and I did put we'll call it a block heater, but it's not really a block heater, but it's an inline heater specifically made for warming the water temperature up. Okay. They sell it to diesel guys, right? In the wintertime, it's like, oh, you put this thing in, and for me, it was an easy way to do it and try it. You basically just cut the lower radiator hose and you put this thing in line, and there you go, you're done. And it's not. I mean, I don't know. They have ones that go in the freeze plugs that you can plug in. I don't know how fast they raise the water temperature, but this inline one would basically raise it a degree a minute. So it's not. Wow. I mean, now granted, overall, if you want to raise it to 150 degrees and you're at 80, so it's going to take an hour and a half for you to get the temperature up. But for me, it was more about not necessarily being able to warm the car up all the way to optimal temperature from let's call it 0, but being able to just make sure that the car stays at that temperature, particularly on the colder days in the late fall and stuff like that. So that's the only additional cost that I have, and it's like, yeah, now instead of coming back to the pits and running my battery charger and the fan and the water pump for while the fan and the water pump get run for 15 minutes to cool the car down, and you're running the battery charger the whole time because you got the fan and water pump that it's draining the battery. Now it's like with the alternator on the car, you come back from a pass, you shut the car off, you really don't have to charge the battery at all, and at that point you take the plug for the water heater and the oil pan heater if you want, and you plug them into your regular generator that you're running anyways, and that's it.
So, if I understand, just to break this down, you get back, if you're running methanol, to the pits, you return to the pits, and you're done. You shut the car.
You fill it with fuel and you're done. Yes, that's pretty much it. Now the guys would give me the guys at the track that know me, they would give me some crap about it because they know that I'm a stickler for torquing my rear wheels. So yes, does Jason just come back and put fuel in it? No, Jason has to come back and put fuel in it and make sure he torques his all 4 wheels as well. But
make sure that chrome didn't fly off.
Exactly.
Make sure that trim didn't disappear.
Yes. There's really not a lot. I mean, I always pull the hood off between runs just to double check everything. Hey, the belt's still okay, spark plug wire's still on, you see anything loosening up, any fuel leaks or anything like that. So literally, and you don't have to do that. I mean, it's part of my normal between round maintenance, but it's like, how long does that take? It might take me 60 seconds total to do that.
The car's already cooled down by the time you're done with
for
that.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, at that point, you're filling it back with methanol and you're ready to go again. So you get into any sort of hot lapping situation, methanol is definitely the way to go, for sure.
We had an indoor event long ago, and it was so cold outside, the ventilation system wasn't up to what they thought it was, and the cold air had settled into the ventilation system, so the hot air from the cars couldn't escape.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it started stacking all
Yep.
the exhaust and stuff down on it just started collecting around the bottom half of the upper bowl.
Yeah. Yep.
So they opened up all the fire exits to get the cross draft, and it cleared out, and everything was fine. But those big temperature swings were causing some real discomfort inside.
Yeah.
Cars didn't really seem to care, but we had a car that was on methanol that ended up getting frost during one of the red flag stoppages.
Yeah.
Got frost on the outside of the other carburetor.
Yeah.
It was really kind of cool because there was such a juxtaposition between what was happening in the carburetor and the abuse that the engine was going through.
It is weird, and you would almost think that it would be the opposite. I don't know what happens. So 90-degree day, you have a 5-gallon jug of methanol sitting outside on a 90-degree day. So in general, that methanol is 90 degrees, right? Mm-hmm. You go and you pour it into the fuel cell, and as you're doing it, you get some couple of drops on your fingers. It feels ice cold. Mm-hmm. And clearly, the methanol has to be doing something with the moisture in your skin, and I would guess that it's like, I don't know. I mean,
it's sucking the moisture out of your skin.
Well,
it's
you would
evaporating
think
fast, just like put rubbing alcohol on your hand. That's the same temperature as your bathroom after you take a shower. Put rubbing alcohol in your hand. It's going to feel cold.
But you would think that it would. You would think that it would, if it sucked the moisture out of your skin, you would think that it would burn and not feel cold. So I don't know if the methanol on your skin
How fast does it evaporate off your finger?
I have no idea, honestly.
You've never spilled it because it takes that long.
Well,
to fill
you know, I'll tell you, I take that back. It's definitely not like racing gasoline, because racing gasoline evaporates instantly,
Right.
And the methanol definitely does not evaporate instantly. When I get a couple of drops on the car, I mean, with racing gasoline, by the time I get a rag to go back and wipe it off the car, it's gone. With methanol, that's not the case. It's still there. So I don't know if when you get it on your skin, if it's sucking moisture out of the atmosphere and like depositing it on your skin to make it feel cold. I don't know, but it is weird that, like I said, you could have a liquid that's at 90 degrees and you put it on your skin and it feels ice cold. It's like, how is this possible? So I need a chemist to explain it to me.
Well,
I guess.
mean, we were talking about Jeffy Schumann. His two favorite things to talk about are carburetors and exhaust systems.
Okay, so he'd be loving this discussion.
If he was here, he would be making us both feel exceptionally dumb.
Yeah,
and he would be talking in circles around us. So that's that conversation. We can have that at some point. Jeffy is always ready to talk about carburetors and flow and stuff like that. And also, you get something that's I've always thought, and there may be no scientific truth to this, but if you get a liquid passing through a tube, the faster you move it, the colder that tube's going to be, because the liquid passing through it is pulling energy, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I always thought that there was something to do with that as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure if I would have paid attention in fluid dynamics and chemistry in college, I probably would have had all the answers. But yeah, I don't.
I mean, the people at home who know the answer to this are like just ready to shut off. Like, well,
right? These guys are.
It was a whole lot more fun when you were gone. You are clearly talking out your ass.
Right.
We do have a question. Joe wants to know about word on the schedule for next year.
Oh, word on the Western New York Super Rod Association schedule.
Yes.
So I don't know. Haven't looked at putting anything together as of yet.
Been too busy dusting off your fluid dynamics books.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely need, this is something that we definitely need to talk about, not only, with the track, but also with the competitors as well. It was a challenging season for the Western New York Super Rod Association with regards to car counts. We had a difficult time basically getting people to come out and basically support the races. And a big part of that is because we talked a little bit before we went on the air about the big dollar bracket races that you have a lot of people that are doing that, and even Empire's doing more of that too. I mean, this year they had the twin 75 hundos, and they had the 10K. I don't know if it was a twin 10K or the 10K race that they put on too. I don't know if they're going to do any more, but guys like doing that, and there's a whole bunch of options now to be able to travel to go race for $5,000 to $10,000, almost every weekend with not that far of a tow. And we got guys. I know Lance Pinto. I don't think we've ever had Lance on the show, but he was. Western New York Super Rod Association champion at least one year, and he's got his car for sale.
Where's he from?
He is. His shop is in Ontario. I'm guessing he probably lives in Ontario as well. I'm not 100% sure. Ontario, New York, not Canada.
Yeah. No, I understood. I was trying to think of the driver that I think was in Newark. I thought.
Oh, that's Harry Phelps.
Yes.
Yeah, Harry.
He was
Phelps.
a champion too. Twice.
Yes. Harry was a champion as well. Actually, I hope. I guess I'll shout out to Harry. I hope he's doing well. He was in the hospital at the end of the racing season. Hopefully. I think he was going to have surgery last I knew, but hopefully Harry's home and doing well. But you have at this point we have a group of hardcore racers that like to race super gas, and from there you have a bunch of guys that. Yeah, they don't mind doing it as long as it doesn't conflict with some other big dollar bracket race that they want to go to. And because
how many tracks did you getting to? Was it almost exclusive? It
was exclusive. It's been exclusively Empire for the last 2 years. Yeah.
I thought you went out to Ohio once.
So we did. So that was in 2019 is when we went to. It was probably 2019, but 2018 or 2019 was when we went out to Dragway 42. But yeah, we used to go to Toronto Motorsports Park. We went to Lancaster at least once or twice. We're racing at Empire.
New Media's been.
We never went to New Media.
I thought there was a.
Well, Rob.
Not that you.
Rob.
You always pick on me for not saying anything. Every time I talk to you.
Yes. So Rob Keister with the Mid-Atlantic Supergas Association. So he has a race. His North-South Shootout is at New Media. And actually, I will say that when he saw that I was at New Media a couple of weeks ago, he kind of gave me some crap about it. And he's like, "Yeah, now we just need you to come down here for the Supergas race." And I would like to do that. I still prefer racing on the Pro Tree. At any point in time, I would race a Pro Tree race, but rather than the full tree race. I just would. I just like the Pro Tree that much better. But yeah, there's no doubt I'm in the minority. And again, there's probably only, let's call it 6 to 10 of us essentially that generally feel that way. The rest of the guys either don't care one way or the other or prefer the full tree, and that makes it difficult. So I don't want to race with. I don't want to go out and race with 5 or 6 guys. Even though I prefer the Pro Tree. If we can't get at least 8 cars to come out and race, I'm not going to hold a race. And honestly, even at 8 cars, I'm not getting excited. I really want to have 16 cars out there because at 16 cars now we can have a really nice payout for a 4-round race.
Sure.
But if guys are selling their cars and traveling and stuff like that. Then we have to, I guess, take a step back and decide what we want to do. And I don't want, super gas or super rod racing to go away. But I also don't want to do 5-car races either.
Right. Yeah. What's the point of that?
Yeah. So that's where we're at. And like I said, that's why we need to have a discussion with
serious soul searching conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And the track is willing to accommodate us if we want to hold races there. Now, granted, we got to make sure that we talk to them and right. Get on the schedule and stuff like that. But we really need to get people to commit to racing. And if people don't want to commit, that's okay. I'm not going to be mad about it. But yeah, we got to have people commit. And if they're not, then all right. Well, we're all going to just go bracket race, I guess, and be done with it. Which I will say that. If we're going to do that, I'm going to have to spend a lot more time on the practice tree because for whatever reason, I am just terrible. I won't say terrible, but I am not good on a full tree. I'm just out of practice, and I'm really inconsistent. I'm 000 one pass. I'm 50 the next. Yeah. And when you're doing that means you can't set your delay box. It's like, all right, well, do I set my delay box to put delay in because I was 000 and I almost red lighted, or do I take 50 out because I was just 50 and I was late and I should have lost? It's you got to be more consistent. So I'll have to get on the practice tree a lot more if we're going to do just go bracket race all the time. Which if we do, all right, that's fine. My car doesn't care. Phil's car doesn't care. Now I will say, Phil doesn't want to race bracket race either. So I don't know what we're going to do with Phil's car.
Right.
So that's maybe Phil's car will be all right. We're going to only go to 4 races a year, and we're going to travel down to race all of Rob's races. I'm not sure. Now we had this discussion again before we came on the air. The only issue that I have with Rob's races is that he races them all at NHRA tracks. That require essentially all of your NHRA credentials to be able to race them. And it's like, okay, I understand. And maybe if we were going to race 4 or 5 races a year with Rob, that we could justify, getting a membership and a license and chassis cert and all the rest of it that go along with it. But I don't want to do all that for one race. It's too expensive on top of the cost to travel to a race and the
$500. So ends up being what? It's $500 by the time you're done.
By the time you're done, yeah, it's $500 that you're
for
paying.
For 2 years. So it's $250 a year.
Yeah.
For one race.
Yeah, for one race, it's a lot of money, right? Now again, if you're going to do it, 4 races a year, it's like, okay, well now you can. It's not that bad of a cost, but. And I'm not saying that I would never do it, but maybe that's what we do with Phil's car. Maybe we're going to go race the Mid-Atlantic Super Series. The other one I don't know about is I don't know what Ted Barnes is doing.
Western New York Hot Rod Series has a good
well, yeah, and we kind of did that, right? I mean, we didn't go to the 7.0 index in the 8th mile, but we went from the 4/10 Pro Tree like you normally would race with Super Gas or Super Rod, and went to the 5/10 Pro Tree to try and get more guys out. Sticking with the 640 index, still really didn't draw the number of cars that we would have wanted to. So, and I'm not gonna try and compete against Ted Barnes and the and his series in the TNT series. If Ted, the problem he didn't, the TNT series didn't race this year, basically because of the fact that he's Canadian. Joe Boniferro, who basically is the tech director for the series, he's Canadian. They have a whole bunch of Canadian racers, and no one could get over the border because the U.S. said, no, we don't want no stinking Canadians over here this summer. So that's been lifted now. So
was it today? Or was it last month?
I think it was last month.
Was it?
That they it was, I mean, but yeah, it wasn't long ago.
The 4th was sticking in my mind, but I couldn't remember why.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago. And I had actually thought that the border was just closed, period. And then when I heard that the border was open, I'm like, oh, great, I can't wait to see all my Canadian friends again. And I had a couple of guys message me, and they're like, hey, it's like the border wasn't closed because of us. It was because of the Americans. And I'm like, oh. So now at this point, will the TNT series start back up for next year? I don't know. I don't know what Ted's plans are. I know that he had fun this summer racing up in Canada and basically just bracket racing. So I'm not sure. Now, if they were to, if he was going to call it a career with regards to the TNT, would I consider making it the Western New York Super Street Association? Yeah, I would consider it if more guys would come out and support it. But like I said, I'm not going to compete with Ted. If Ted's going to run his series, then maybe that's what we end up doing. Maybe we fold the Western New York Super Rod Association and tell guys, hey, if you want to go run Pro Tree race, go race TNT.
There's your options.
I don't want to do it, but it is what it is. Like I said, there's not enough guys to support it. That's just the way it goes. So we'll see. But like I said, we need to figure out what we're going to do for Phil's car, because I don't know.
And if you're only bringing 5 or 6 cars, it puts other stresses on the series.
Oh, sure.
It puts other stresses on the series from a management standpoint. It's awful hard to get a sponsor on board when you're saying, yeah, all year long at our 8 races, we collected a total of 40 entries.
Right.
And it just, they're not going to be excited about that, and that's going to make it awful tough to bolster payouts and stuff, so, or year-end stuff.
Yeah, and that was really why a couple of years ago we decided, so COVID was 2020, so I think it was 2019, was with 2019 when we started seeing the car count drop. That was when we decided, hey, you know what, we're not going to go out and try and really push hard for sponsors, and then and basically be as much self-funded as we could. And then when COVID hit, it's like, I can't in my right mind when people have no business. I mean, businesses are going out of business left and right here. It's like I can't, in my right mind, go to somebody and ask them for sponsorship money during COVID time. So for the last basically 3 years, we've run essentially self-funded, which is fine. But yeah, now if you say, all right, well, you're going to be self-funded. Well, what do you want to? You still want to run for $1,000 to win? Okay, well, we have 5 cars. It's going to be a $200 entry, winner take all. Who wants to do that? No one wants to do that. So that's where we're at. So there you go. There's we had a whole bunch of topics to talk about, and an hour later we've talked about me and the Corvette.
But it was fun. Yeah, but right now we're projected to be hitting every other Thursday.
Back on schedule, I hope. Yep.
And I think we kicked around floating start times, possibly 6 o'clock when we have local guests, possibly sticking with the 7 o'clock. So right now, we're back on every other Thursday. So we are going to be back here on, it is the 17th, I believe, right? 18th.
18th?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 18th, yes. Yep, yeah, today's
Next
the 4th.
week, I'm in Topeka, and you're traveling too. Where are you going next week? Aren't you going out Midwest?
No, it's actually the week of the 18th. I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm coming back. I'm flying back on that Thursday.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll be back. I don't know. I think my flight gets back around noon or something like that on Thursday. So I'll either be you can still make it to the studio, or we'll do it virtual if for some reason something happens to my flight.
But we rolled out some of the remote graphics when we did the episodes from home during COVID. We got those all set up from tonight, which was cool. We got Facebook running pretty flawless. Joe enjoyed the show. Have a good night. He's checking out.
Yeah, and I will say that we have a couple of, over the course of summer, I had, multiple people come to us, come to me and basically say, hey, what's going on? And people offering to be on. So I know that, I don't know, maybe might have been the last in-studios show that we had was Kathy Keekle and Crystal Kerpier. So, they expressed interest in coming back on again. Cool. We have... So Jeff Jackson, his son, Jeff Jackson Jr., actually won a $5,000 to win bracket race over the summertime, and expressed interest in coming on. So I told him we could have him on virtually as well.
We've got a bunch of stuff happening here locally, and I didn't realize this, but the drag strip, the Seneca Army Depot, is having no prep racing.
Oh, no kidding.
SCCA is back over there. The autocross, I think is what they called it.
Okay.
And then they're having no prep racing over there. There's a guy here locally that's been doing that. I've been in contact with him here and there. So he's expressed interest in coming on the show, and he's somebody that's close enough to where he could make it. He could come in studio. We could talk with him, and I think that'd be a lot of fun because for a while the racing at the depot had stopped. The concrete had gotten so bad. Mostly because the seals in between the slabs started to pull out, and there was nobody doing any maintenance on it.
Yeah.
So,
so they were doing that this
that's
summer?
happened a couple times in the last 3 months. They had some races out there.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, my dad's been going out shooting, so we got some photos and stuff to fall back on. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. I will say another guy too, Josh Williams. So I talked to him at Empire over the summer. He's got a really cool full-size Chevy pickup that he runs.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a twin turbo. I know it's at least a single turbo, but it might be a twin turbo. Really cool. And so he expressed interest in coming on the show. And he's in Buffalo someplace. But he's like, no, if I'm doing it, I'm coming into the studio. He's like, I'm not doing it. I'm like, okay, great. So, yeah, he's committed to coming to the studio for sure. And, so we're definitely going to have a bunch of people.
We've never had the chance to talk to the folks at ESTA.
Right.
We went all year. So I'm sure we'll table that until March. But that conversation's coming around too. So not bad. Got to come back in. It was good to get things going. Good to have some momentum going forward with final round right now.
Good to see you in person again.
Yes, very nice. Are you heading back home immediately?
No,
we got to plan out our schedule.
I guess I would say it's it's up to you and whether or not we're going to have a post-production meeting. If we are, then
we got to figure out our schedule.
Right.
We've got work to do.
We do.
I got to show you all the cool stuff on WWE Champions that you missed out on.
Oh, boy, yeah. That's something I don't need.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered pretty much everything that we're going to cover on this edition, number 96, in 4 episodes from now, which should put us close to the turn of the year.
Yep.
That doesn't make you a little bit sick to your stomach. But close to the turn of the year, we'll be hitting episode number 100, so hopefully we can get some phone calls and some in-person guests and stuff from the course of the 100 episodes. But we'll...
Can we drink champagne on air?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I got a champagne story for you. We'll call it there, and we will see everybody again next time. We'll let you know after the show. Whoops. That was one thing I didn't plan for.
This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.